question. As Bharatanatyam artists, we cannot just be content evaluating ourselves only against our contemporaries and peers. We need to have a larger vision in observing and imbibing what is good in dance approaches across the world. Why? Because today the space for the enjoyment of the classical, when compared to popular art, is a very small slice of people's attention spans. In that tiny space for appreciation of the classical, there is competition from classical music and dance forms from across the world. As today, we are global citizens with wide access and exposure to art forms across the world. So a Bharatanatyam dancer does not jostle for attention space from her own peers, but maybe from ballet, from any other world dance forms, from any part of the world. We need to therefore be constantly aware of what is happening in the context of world dance and stay tuned to keep ourselves on par or better. Dance presentation across the globe varies in approach and execution. Discussing the ecology of Indian dance in the context of world dance is none other than Dr. Anita Ratnam, who is here with us. I cannot think of a better artist to take us through this, and I welcome her to share her experiences, and she also poses fresh questions for us Bharatanatyam practitioners and teachers. Welcome, Dr. Anita Ratnam.
Not too bright lights, thank you. Today is December the 28th. Many centuries ago, Galileo spotted the planet Neptune thinking it was a fixed star in the sky. Today, in the year 1895, the Lumiere brothers had their first commercial screening of a film in the Salon d'Indien, the Indian Salon in Paris. Today, the 13th day of Margari, is the birth star of Arvar Tondaredipudi. Today, I stand here on the stage of Krishnagana Sabha, which is the first organization to start an annual dance conference in 1981. And a stage that has given not just myself, but many artists under the very bold direction of the late Sri Yagniraman, such constant encouragement that I must acknowledge it. My session is not full of personal reminiscences, which has been the tone of the conference so far. I will share a couple, but I want to share certain ideas, certain aspects that I've observed through my 40 years of traveling overseas. I set foot in America in 1976 of December, so it is 40 years. And I want to end not with a question to me, but I would like to hear from the diaspora dancers, because attendance in Margari today is only 20% from Tamil Nadu and 80% from outside. So I think that opinion is also extremely valid. Cyclone Varda devastated 1 lakh trees in our city. And there is a huge move to become an eco-warrior, to replant, retill the soil and plant seeds. We need that spirit in dance. Because these lone trees that stand shorn of their leaves and branches is what a dancer feels like today, amidst an ecosystem that is relatively barren. We know that we have too many dancers and not enough support, and that is why I want to talk of the possibility of an ecosystem. I cannot say that every place in India can be perfect, but the acknowledgement and awareness that we as dancers needs to be greater. Today, we have Mata, Pita, Google, Devam. We have YouTube. So there is no excuse for saying we don't have exposure, we don't have knowledge. just imagine the very act of you wanting to be a dancer itself is a very political decision. You are most probably surrounded by a lot of naysayers if you happen to be the first in your family to want to be a dancer. So that itself is like being a lone tree swaying in the wind. With that decision has to come not just daily practice from morning to night. You know that doesn't work anymore. You really have to build a 360-degree perspective. So imagine if you can just be a dancer and you are surrounded by a group of supporters who are fundraiser, organizer, dramaturg, education outreach, development director, third eye mentor. These are all, I'm just not pulling names out of a hat. These are the various areas of dance proficiency and expertise that exist today in the world of dance, because dance is considered artistic activity, culturally valid and valuable for a community, but it's also commerce. Dance organizations are involved outside India 24/7 in how to raise awareness, reach audiences, and raise money. So let me give you a couple of examples. America happens to be the greatest area of comfort for me. In a city like New York, there will be a theater called the Joyce, or in London there's a theater called the Place, and they will only present contemporary dance. They won't present music and opera and theater. A larger place, say the Barbican or Sadler Wells, will be presenting bigger productions. Lincoln Center, BAM, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, they have what is called the next wave. So every theater has a kind of a sthai bhava, if you want to call it that. If you have patrons for a certain theater, you also have an audience cultivated who love dance, who want to go to dance, who read up about a dancer, who want to follow a particular artist, and they arrive prepared. Rama spoke about the value of program notes. Dancers, please have program notes and date your work. If you created a work in 2001, and if you're redoing it in 2016, say 2001, because that was the time you created the work. It's really important to do that. I don't need to tell you about lights and stage and those kinds of things, because there's so much knowledge. But I do like the idea of all of you thinking about something called house music. That something that will set the tone or the mood for what the audience are going to see, because we live in an increasingly distracted world. What I find most encouraging when I talk to presenters and people who manage spaces, they have two concerns. They want what they call bums on seat. They want people to come and sit. And then they're also aware, like in the UK, that the Indian dance, or the South Asian dance as they call it, is a huge thriving activity. So there is a need to not just program the dance because they know the community will come or may come, but they also want to have a level of engagement or entertainment or something that will bring people back, because usually these are not one-night stands. These are week-long gigs. Let me tell you an instance where from Krishnagana Sabha, I went in 1998 to the Queen Elizabeth Hall in London. Anybody who knows that hall can tell you that it's really difficult for a solo dancer to be in that space. It is huge. Chitra, you know, it's like, it's so huge, and this hall is raked to go right up. So fortunately, I had O.S. Arun with me in 1998. He himself is a theatrical actor by himself. So, no, it was very important, because I had to then, in a way, retweak or re-choreograph the work. And I found it extremely difficult. Even the gaze had to be lifted. So that was 1998. As recent as 2015, when the now very successful Ragamala dance company from Minneapolis, whose daughter, Rani's daughter, Aparna Ramaswamy, got this very, very prestigious opportunity to perform at the Joyce Theatre, her solo Andal work. It was a weekday assignment that was given to her dates. But the response, even though she got a beautiful review in the New York Times, was, why is this girl just going back and forth and side and side? I mean, this was just from dance audiences. This, is there no other kind of movement that the dance tradition allows? So work, or the way it was choreographed, or maybe the way she learned it, or maybe the way you learn it from your guru, the dancer needs to think of herself as a 360-degree living body. Very important. One of the great things about dance organizations in cities, at least like New York, and I know perhaps in London, is that organizations talk to each other. Because they feel that if they can get the money into the dance, each of them benefit. Many of them, the artistic directors of spaces would meet, and they would say, okay, who's visiting? Who can we bring? Can we pool money and bring an artist? Can we have meet the artist at one venue and the full production in another venue? Recently, Lakshmi Vishwanathan was in New York doing pre-performance talks with Mark Morris, once known as the bad boy of American modern dance. And the response that I got from many Indian friends was how marvelous this was to listen to Lakshmi. We didn't know so much about the Tanjore heritage or the Devadasi tradition, which goes to show that we just don't have NRIs living outside India. We have RNIs, resident non-Indians, who live here, who still need to be maybe remembered about what was. Coming to the New York Times, the role of the critic and the dancer is quite clear in the West. Alistair Macaulay, this Englishman who now lives in New York, he came to the Music Academy series, I think last season or the season before. He ran up to me and said, hello, I'm Alistair, and ran away. And I said, why? Well, if he says more than that, he won't be able to review your work. He's not allowed. But we still had Anna Kisselgoff, who championed the cause of Martha Graham through her constant writing in the New York Times. We had Joan Acacella, who followed Mark Morris. And we have Sanjoy Roy in the UK, who follows Shobana Jaisingh. Each of them, they follow a certain artist, but they can be objective, they can be critical, and they will always analyze the artist's work. An interesting example of how publishers and editors stand behind their dance critics. One of the best examples is Arlene Croce of the New Yorker magazine. There was a work by a very famous African-American artist called Bill T. Jones, whose partner Arnie Zane was dying of AIDS. So they created a work called Still Here Now, which included projection, but also a projection of the patients dying of AIDS and the dancers in the front screen performing. Arlene Croce refused to review the work, saying this is victim art because there is automatic sympathy. She wrote saying, why I will not review Still Here Now. This started a national debate with editors of all the major magazines to say it is the duty of the dance critic, if you're asked to review the work. Well, finally, after the work premiered, the New Yorker magazine, you could open it, and there was a blank page. So both the writer stood by her decision. The magazine took a stand and said, this is Arlene Croce's review. So this is quite interesting. This becomes a very important moment in the kind of relationship that a critic has with either an artist or a decision to review or not review. And I want to say that, and automatically I know the writers sitting here will be saying, well, I know that they also don't chop off my final paragraph to accommodate an ad or whatever, but that's not the point of my presentation. The other point is, we will think, oh my God, they have so much funding. Money is rolling in. They are rolling in it, they get grants, it's really not as rosy as you all think. It's very, very difficult. And Bharatanatyam dancers, or all classical dancers who live overseas, especially in the UK and the US, that seem to be rolling in the money. I have Anandavalli here from Australia. It's not that easy. It's very difficult. Grant writing is a special skill. Now, yes, there are grants. You want to study with a certain artist, there is maybe a mentoring grant. There is a choreography grant. There are several grants for several stages. But let me tell you, once you get a grant, you are accountable. You can't just spend the money because the work that you're granted for gets assessed. I'll give you an example. Very well-known Indian dancer from Canada received a very, very large grant, and the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, sent an anonymous assessee to assess the work. The assessment was not favorable. When Canada Council found out about it, they called the NEA to say, how could you not give a favorable review to one of our most celebrated artists? The NEA said, I'm sorry, this goes into the review. So this is an anonymous review. The artist gets the review at the end. They don't know who's written the review, but the artist gets that anonymous review. So the accountability for an artist, when you get the grant, doesn't mean you're just sort of rolling in the money and you can do what you want with it. I know artists who are so careful about what they spend on the company budget for excess baggage, what they spend personal, because every little bit has to be accounted. It is a taxpayer's money. We'll come to what our taxpayers' money is doing at the end, because I think it's very important to also know that. I started about ecology, and I want to return to that as a refrain. We now have a situation where the role of the dramaturg has become very, very important. Now, what is a dramaturg? Why does a dancer need a dramaturg? Why does a dancer need a theatre director to start with? Because we've learnt mostly from our gurus, and once we've left the gurus or feel we've grown out of the gurus, we sort of flounder on our own. We have a few people, we belong to some productions, we do something, we respond to a certain choreographer, we do whatever we have to do, and then we move on to the next. A dramaturg comes from the theatre world and is the glue that connects the script or the text, creates the context for that text, and works between the director and the choreographer and the artist. So now you have a dramaturg, a choreographer, a mentor, a third eye. You will say, my God, too many cooks. Sometimes it does become too many cooks. I did see a recent production that I felt that the choreographer herself had too many influences. And now we also have such sophisticated lighting design that a lighting designer is telling the dancer what to do and what not to do. If you hold this and I put the light off, I think this will be a more dramatic moment, and then why don't you come here? So the dancer is getting so many inputs with the growth of technology and the increasing sophistication of systems. Today when we stand in Margari in Madras, it's so easy to be comfortable, to say, with all the legends who have been here in the past days, who have had such amazing touring possibilities, who continue to have a roster of very, very busy performances or teaching or workshops, that of course Bharatanatyam is loved. Of course Bharatanatyam is in demand. Bharatanatyam has become boring. Solo dance is not in demand amongst many, many Western presenters. There was a time that Bharatanatyam was the image for Indian dance on tourism posters. Bharatanatyam dancers were always invited to Delhi when international state guests were there. It was always a solo Bharatanatyam dancer. We are in the golden age of Odissi and Kathak. This doesn't mean that Bharatanatyam is dead, it just means that it's part of a curve. Bharatanatyam has enjoyed a wonderful glory day, the solo form as we many years ago learnt it and we know it. And today young dancers, I know, are seeking to how to connect. But we need training for artistic directors. We also need trained to be choreographers. You think everybody can just choreograph? We can't. The art of choreography itself is a specialized skill. So I come back to ecology. We have the Guru Sishya paradigm, and after that, what? So when I come back to the idea of money, and we say, oh, we don't have the money, the Krishnagana Sabha can only do so much. I'm not asking one place to have all the answers. I'm saying that when Srinidhi's father-in-law, P. Chidambaram, was finance minister, and I was in a meeting with him, and I was saying we need to increase our budget for the performing arts. He said, what are you talking about? The ministry is returning, your Sangeet, your culture ministry is returning the money to me every year. They're not spending the money. So the allocated budget is not being spent. And here we are, about 2,000 miles from Delhi, thinking that there's not enough money for the arts. But obviously, we are bureaucrats handling culture. When we need artistic directors, we need producers, and we need so many other kinds of training. So when we have 4 premier national institutions funded by taxpayer government money, Kudiyattam Kendra, Kathak Kendra, Jawaharlal Manipur Kendra, and Kalakshetra, with budgets of between 7 and 12 crores a year, why are we not thinking of producing an enriched ecology of people who can support dance, who can be excited about dance, who can passionately talk about dance, how to connect, how do we create audiences, how do we make young audiences, how can we reach out? This is a software hub. How can we go to people? We have more paid audiences to go and watch Mountbatten Mani's Kitchen or Zakir's morning upanyasams than we have in the evening concerts here. And that is the truth. I mean, I love this, the crowd at the Natikala conference mornings. I think it's fantastic. So thank you, Srinidhi, and thank you all for coming. Now, so this is what I'm trying to get at, is that the Bharatanatyam dancer cannot be smug. This is the 10th rasa, by the way. 10th rasa, smug rasa. We cannot be smug to say divine, sacred, spiritual, God, this plane, that plane. The work that connects best, as we saw with Rama, is Lokadharmi. Everyday experience, personal experience. What happens with the dancer is her inner journey. What she communicates with the audience is the technique, or what the intention. One critic, when I was at the Dance Critics Conference in New York, said, we don't like to come near Indian dance. These dancers are always saying it's sacred, you know nothing about it, it's spiritual, what do you know about it? Well, now the New York Times has a situation where all my American friends said, what do you mean we only get to see reviews of Indian dance? But it's the same reviewer that I want dancers to think about talking back at. The same reviewer called Komanam adult diapers when the people wore the Komanam for Kalari, and Kapila Venu's headdress a wedding cake. In the New York Times, there was not one letter back to the editor from the community of New York dancers to say, this is disrespectful. It's not that the New York Times won't publish it, they will. But so I'm coming to the politics of it. Why do we not talk to each other more, share ideas more? This is the retilling of the soil of the ecology. We are in Madras, and we have, Bharatanatyam is a global industry, valued at $4 million last year, that the NRI community brings to this city in the month of Margari, because I'm looking at dance and music. It's an enormous amount of money. This is like unaccounted GDP. Well, now it is accounted GDP after the demonetization, but this is, when I go to theaters around the world and I see fabulous stages, yes, but do we know how to handle the space? Do we know what to do when? Two small examples. Peabody Essex Museum, Salem, Massachusetts. Salem was the site of the witch burning trials, the famous witch burning trials where women were burnt. And actually they were hanged but not burnt. But in medieval times they were also burnt. When I'm asked to dance and you come with that history, you can't suddenly break into a tilana. It's not possible. It's not possible. So I had done 3 pieces on the woman and the goddess, but I wanted to end with something else, but what I did end was with Maya Angelou's poem, And Still I Rise. Yes. You can write me into your twisted histories, you can with your twisted lies, you can ground me into the dirt, but like dust, still I'll rise. So it was an ode to the women. It was an ode to the women. In Santiago, Chile, they had 17 years of this very brutal dictator, Augusto Pinochet. Pinochet rounded up all the artists into the arena and cut off their hands, cut off their tongues, and cut off their legs, and cut off their heads. All artists, musicians, dancers, poets, writers, painters, sculptors, everybody was mutilated in those 17 years. One of the most celebrated guitarists was Victor Jara, who became the symbol of the resistance. He was also tortured and beheaded and his body thrown onto the street. We were part of a dance conference, at the end of which I was doing a presentation. We were taken to the Museum of Holocaust and Memories, that's what it's called. The tour guides are the living survivors of that brutal dictator regime. And we were put into a small room, really tiny, 16 of us in a small room where the lights slowly went to pitch black. We were just huddled like this. It was only 30 seconds of nothing, just pitch black. It was 30 seconds, it felt like a lifetime. They wanted to give us a little sliver of an experience of what it was to be in a situation like that for 10 years. When the lights came on and the door opened, yes, it was terrifying, and it was cathartic and life-changing. So what can one do when you have that experience? Because Chile has kept the buildings through which the prisoners were killed with the bullet holes. They've asked muralists to come and paint on them scenes of joy, and in front of that they've built an open-air theater. They haven't demolished any of those buildings where people were incarcerated. They've created works of art and re-imbued it with a sense of purpose. So what I did was, fortunately, Tagore, who's so popular, has also been translated into Spanish. And he has a beautiful poem called Prithvi, where he talks about the earth itself as a cruel mother devouring her children. A beguiling, she's deceptively sweet, but she can also be really, really terrifying. And Pablo Neruda's poem called The Saddest Lines I Ever Wrote. All I did was ask a guitarist and a person in Spanish. We had one day, so it was only a 5 to 6 minute piece. But the Bharatanatyam vocabulary has given me that power to engage with other languages, not set to Carnatic music, but to engage with movement and feeling and intention and rasa, but to feel for that moment. Today, when we have cyclone, we just can't talk about the lush forests of Vrindavan. It doesn't make sense if we dance that. Or last year when we had the terrible water situation where people are dancing about the Yamuna and the Godavari and the beautiful tranquil waters of the Ganga, it doesn't make sense. So I ask Bharatanatyam dancers especially, think about what you do, for whom you do and why you do. It's really, really important. When I say Bharatanatyam is boring, I throw it as a challenge because that's what I've heard. Why are so many group productions happening all the time? What is this constant, huge frenzy to somehow keep performing, creating, and somehow engaging, but not quite connecting? After all, I want this image, which has changed to this image, and this image where you have instant reviews, instant epic LOLs, ROFLs, and all the likes. What is the need for anything else? This is the producer, this is the artistic director, this is the choreographer, the image is the dance, and nothing else matters. You need to put this down, and look around at this world, because only then can you be a part of this ecology. And that is my presentation. As I said, I don't want to give gyan, so I don't want to answer questions to have solutions, but I would like to hear from the diasporic communities about maybe an experience, because I know that as we speak, beautiful auditoriums are happening even in Sri Lanka. This war-ravaged Sri Lanka is building beautiful halls for dance. And lovely things are happening around us. We don't have to look to Europe, we don't have to look to America. So can I hear experiences from people? Can I hear possibilities? Can I hear solutions? Can I hear
Yes, Anita. When you choreograph to theaters in the United States, definitely you have to keep in mind space. As you said earlier, going back and coming in front and, going to the right and left is not adequate because the stage is very rich. Every part of the stage can be lit. So when I choreograph a group production, I keep in mind, the ability to cover a lot of space.
Do you work with a theater director or a dramaturg? That's my question.
No. Okay. I choreograph my own productions for my students.
Do you feel the need to have a third eye or a mentor? Do you feel that because you're a guru, you have your students?
Yes.
But do you feel the need to have somebody come in when the work is happening or in the process of being built, just to look at it and maybe just have some conversations with you?
No.
You don't?
Yeah.
Has anybody done that? Has anybody? Yes.
Yeah. What I was saying is that we have to adapt our choreography to cover more space.
Yes.
That's the sum and substance of my point. Yeah.
Okay. The choreography to cover more space. Okay. Yes, Priya?
It's very true, whatever you said, Anita. Many years ago, we took this production, Krishna Mandi Jagat Guru, and we had a kind of a session with Pushkala Akka here. And we were supposed to do, this was way back in early 90s, and we were all youngsters, and we were supposed to do leg dims. So one of the things that she said, which I feel even now people make, not a mistake, she said, don't say pure dance. So what is impure dance? So when you say Nritta, most of us say pure dance. So that was like, and then you've always told us that, don't say sacred and divine, they're not going to understand. So when we had a tour this time, and we were trying to explain to people in the US, all these actually helped us a lot. And then in terms of spaces, yes, it is true that there are many places in the US that have very big. At the same time, there are these temple prosceniums which has only one side. So every time we go and look at the place, and we have to re-choreograph it, whether it is tape music, it is very important for us to look at that. Point two, even in solos, many years ago, I performed at the academy, and Anita was the first one who came and told me, why did you do a Tilana? Because she said the kind of abhinayam that you did at the Tilana was redundant. It made me think, I don't know whether I still have the conviction not to perform a Tilana, but I think we need to, as dancers, we need to kind of open our minds more, people who have these experiences, which is definitely going to help us.
One of the things I'd like to just point out is that because most of us learn thinking that we're going to be soloists, we're not very good as part of an ensemble. A group production, as my friend Chitra Sundaram points out, is not the same as being part of an ensemble. An ensemble is really where you know what your partner here and there, you can pick up if somebody's making a mistake, you really understand it and you're reading into somebody's movement. That is an ensemble. And our classical traditions don't train us to be ensemble dancers. It's one thing to be part of a group, and I know of some American choreographers who've had disastrous experiences with classical dancers because they said, you can't come near me, I'm sacred, I'm the vessel for the pure, I'm the divine, you can't touch me, this person can't. So I know that either the project was shelved or that dancer was fired. Another aspect is I know that the role of a choreographer in Western dance is so sacrosanct. When a choreographer creates movement, he or she doesn't come and say, do this. They'll ask the dancer to start giving movement phrases. They'll give them impulses, show me something, do something, turn, do something that spins and low and stretch. They'll give you some, what they call tasks. And many times, Bharatanatyam dancers don't know how to start. What do you mean to do? How do I do? Do I do it Tei Hattei? Teyum Tata will work. Tate Tam will work. So that process of working with a choreographer and actually starting to give something of yourself is also a learning process. And once you are part of an ensemble, you don't make a fuss to say, this costume doesn't suit me, I won't wear it. I don't look pretty in this, I will not wear it. So that is what I mean when you become part of a more professional setup that really wants the best of you and is going to make sure that you are going to look, the work is going to look wonderful.
Ma'am, good afternoon, ma'am.
A quick comment, Anita.
Yeah, we have.
Is this on?
Ma'am,
I think we've gained some time with this. 2 more minutes. Yes.
good afternoon,
1
ma'am.
minute, Anita.
Yes, of course.
I completely agree with you that the money sent by Government of India to various institutions does not reach the dancers as such, because the institution is sort of like, a heritage institution. However, I really agree with you that we need modern facilities and even a basic black box theatre, which we don't have in Chennai, which has about 5,000 performing artists. So I'm willing to go with you, and I'm sure everybody present here will join you in a crusade for having an ideal modern dance theatre.
Yes.
In fact,
Yes.
I'd like to add to that, Anita.
Yes, I want to. Yes, of course, Trinity. Please come into the light, though. Come.
Just to say that,
Yes.
it's
One thing as a Rasika, I would like to say something. Good afternoon, ma'am, and thank you very much for the powerful presentation without the PowerPoint. Ma'am, you were very right. You talked about just getting engaged in dance but not connecting with the realities around. For example, I could connect with you when we were talking about Maya Angelou's poem. And this brings to the point that dancers need to come out of their usual repertoire and get to read more. For example, last year's December Deluge, if it were Anita, I'm sure should have done Mahabharati, Subramanya Bharati's Ozhikuttu. Right? So
Well,
people
for the first
need
time,
to
finish and then I'll
connect themselves to the contemporary literature or relevant literature so that they can bring to the fore something onto the stage.
Sometimes I feel we have so much choreography already given to us that if we just simplify and distill what we have, we don't have to go out and reinvent something else. We have such amazing sophistication in the form itself that we shouldn't be either in a hurry or lack the confidence to reinvestigate our form and our learned traditions. Yes, Srinidhi.
Yes, I just wanted to add to what Lakshmi Aunty said was about, we've heard so much about what is available, what's going on everywhere, but yes, for people who travel abroad and perform a lot, yes, these things are there and we need to be aware. But what about here? This is where it all is supposed to be. So I think what can we do as artists to ensure that we have better spaces, we have better audiences, we have something all going on together, there's more connectivity between people. I think these are huge issues that have come up through this
Well, now with
discussion.
CSR being officially recognized, and we have to just, it's our job really to be spokespeople as advocates for dance, not just to go seek a performance opportunity, but to really look at something that would help, as I said once again, enrich the landscape. Just one last comment and then we're done. Thank
yes,
you.
ma'am. So I loved your talk. What I found most interesting was how you unpacked certain political and historical contexts based on the audiences that you had all around the world. Now, considering if you want to do that again in India, what do you think is the scope for that? Considering two things. One, the fact that classical dances have to be kept classical and sacred on one hand, versus also the sort of sensitivity that exists in India with respect to certain histories and certain events. There is so much politicization of everything. So what are your thoughts on that?
Just one final thought. Dance conferences around the world are not curated and convened by dancers. They are convened and curated by scholars. And that has brought into dance every other dimension of physical movement: sports, fashion, hip-hop, street dancing, politics, sexual identities, queer studies, LGBTQ. Everything has come into dance discourses around the world. In fact, if you make a paper, abstract presentation saying, I want to talk about Bharatanatyam, it'll probably be shot down now in an international conference. But if you're going to give something about, say, a more older tradition, it could be Devadasi, it could be Arya Seve, it could be my 13th century temple tradition of Kaisika Natakam, very great interest. Yes, immediately. Yes, immediately. There is a feeling that there's too much Bharatanatyam coming out of every aperture. That I know my friends in New York, please tell me promising dancers, not Bharatanatyam. Please give me names of dancers, not Bharatanatyam. So, but this is, as I said, it's a curve. It's a time of interest for other forms, and it's a time of interest and attraction and fascination for many things. But instead of calling it Indian dance, the UK was the first to give Bharatanatyam and Kathak as independent status. Ballet, Bharatanatyam, Kathak, contemporary dance. So I think it's really important. Are we okay? Can we end? Are we finished with time, or do we want last comment from Ramli and then Vida?
Maybe.
Yes.
Anita,
Vida.
One of the problems is that the assumption that sacredness is a prerogative of Indian dance.
Yeah.
And this is not true at all. So it becomes slightly embarrassing when you talk about divinity and sacrality, when it takes on the highest principle of everything in life. But the other thing that I find confusing also is the word choreography. In my time, in the 80s, the word choreography was hardly used in the context of Indian dance. What choreography implies your responsibility of that movement, whereas in Indian classical dance, you are subservient to a tradition.
It's dance arrangement.
Dance.
Yes.
But it's creative.
Yes,
also.
it's arrangement.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What I'm interested in, I just come back from a very interesting talk by Nippon Mehta, who talks about the intrinsic transformation or the inner transformation of the generality of the public, where we don't talk about money, where money desensitizes us. So we talk about just simple kindness and generosity and how far it can contribute to the ecosystem that you're talking about.
Yes, I think to be a dancer is an extremely vulnerable, extremely generous calling, because what we share is something so precious, so personal, and it's a time of great vulnerability, but it's also a time of great power. And it's how we use it and how we make the audiences feel, and I suppose that is rasa. But thank you all for being such a great audience, and thank you, Srinidhi, for a lovely 5 days. 5 days, you have a daunting task, and thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anita Ratnam, for that vibrant session. Thank you, Srinidhi. Thank you. Good night. I'll take my leave.